The question is it just taking longer for the market to crash? All right, welcome back to Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett, and back by popular demand is my friend Anton Stetner. And
thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming. And it's true, we have had some requests for more topics around real estate, but also, you know, me and Anton have this cadence of checking up with each other. And usually it happens behind closed doors on our cell phones and
via text message.
And, you know, since we both are in the business these days of creating content, and these are always such great conversations, really what we're doing today is we're just going to open up the conversation that we typically have and share it out there with our Market Shares audience and any of you that care to listen. So, sound like a plan, Anton?
Let's go. Let's rock and roll.
All right. So I want to start by talking about, well, we're going to start talking about the real estate market, turns out, because to refresh your memory, Anton is, you know, he's part owner of a couple real estate firms.
Yep.
He is a top producing realtor in our local market here in the Pacific Northwest. He also is a consummate investor and advisor to other investors, me being one of them. Yep. And what else did I miss?
You know, kids and dogs and a wife, and that's about it.
And a Jeep.
And a Jeep.
And
yeah.
a Jeep. And
all
a
the
Jeep.
cool kids have Jeeps, right?
All the cool kids have Jeeps. Some have two. Anyways, so that's Anton. And so I say that because I really feel that Anton is an expert in the area of real estate. And not only that, he's well studied and a great person to have conversations with about these types of things. And so I'm just going to start off. We have a lot of things that we're going to touch on today, and this may even break up into 2 episodes depending on how far we go. But the first thing is it feels to me like there's this mounting concern about a crash in the housing market.
Yep.
And this has been talked about now for almost going on 2 years. And I get it. You know, I understand why people would think that there could be a bubble in the housing market because values, turns out, are at all-time highs. And, you know, like anything, when you at the very top of the peak, you expect that there's going to be some sort of a huge crash. Now, I'm just going to go on the record right off the bat and say that I am not in the camp that there's going to be a crash in real estate. Now, with that being said, I also don't think anything goes up in straight lines, and I think that you know there can be adjustments. We did see a pullback, and Anton and I talked about it last year. The market peaked in April of 2022, and came down in some areas, you know, 8-10%, in some areas even more. But yet that has now rounded out the bottom and has started to increase. We are now seeing multiple offers and so on and so forth. But the question is it just taking longer for the market to crash? And some people are saying that. And so I think of the perspective of one of our clients.
Yep.
If one of my clients is getting a mortgage or buying a house, they're going to go and like, is the market going to crash? They're really tuned into this. And so I kind of wanted to unpack some of the myths, if you will, of what the people that I see, and you know, we call them, you know, doomsdayers or the market crash boys or whatever you want to call them, that are out there feeding this information about the market crashing. And let's take some of their actual points. I've watched some of their videos. Yep. Didn't change my mind, but I think it's some interesting facts to unpack. So I thought we'd start there.
Cool. Like what part of it specifically, you know, should we talk about first?
Well, I think inventory, because
Okay.
I did an episode a couple episodes ago, and I kind of made mention of where some inventory may come from. Now, I happen to believe that any amount of inventory at this point would be healthy.
Yep.
We need it. But it's being presented in such a way with a lot of these, you know, doomsday YouTubers that there's going to be this mountain of inventory.
Yeah. The tsunami.
The tsunami,
deluge.
yes, of inventory. And what we have right now is we have more demand than we have supply right now.
Yep.
But if you were to just give a little bit more supply, you would see that there's not enough demand to soak it up. So let's start there.
So One thing that people need to really fundamentally think about just in regards to real estate is during the Great Recession in 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now, depending on where you're at in the country, these years are different. But new construction fundamentally stopped during those 4 years because it was hard to get funding, everything was being foreclosed on, and so the banks weren't giving out money like they were before. So going back into that period right before that, so I'm talking 2000 to 2006, realized that builders and developers could get 100% financing. So that's one of the things that led to that boom that created that oversupply of new construction inventory that was part of the debacle that brought us into it.
Right.
Plus all the no-doc loans, things of that.
Oh yeah, those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of it.
Yeah, the ninja loans and all that jazz. But so if you go into it now, most major metros are behind on that housing supply. They never caught up from that 4-year gap, and people still moved into those metros. And definitely here in the Seattle metro, we had net positive migration without an increase in that housing production. So realize from a fundamental perspective on the new construction land development side, the Seattle metro and most of the United States is actually still behind. Okay.
Well, and even though there was like almost nothing there in those 4 years, it really didn't ramp up the remaining 6 years. I mean, it started to, but not ever back to the same level that it was at.
So only in the last, and this is one of those doomsday things that they like to talk about. They like to basically take one little piece of this stat and they like to say, well, new construction just hit a 5-year high. Well, great. It was ramping up, but the 4 years before that, it was still way lower than population needs. So even though it hit that high, and it will have a slight oversupply in some areas of Texas, some areas of Utah, most of the country, especially like here in the Seattle metro, we're behind. So people go, where is the supply coming from? Understand the new construction's not there, number one. Number two, we have this, and we've talked about this before, but there is this lock-in effect, this interest rate hostage that's been created by that normal move-up buyer. They're going to sell their first-time home buyer house, then they're going to buy a bigger one, or they're going to buy the bigger one and move into the McMansion. Try to get someone to trade in a 3% mortgage for a 7.
Right.
Okay? So that makes up usually 40% of the market. A vast majority of that inventory is not coming. So builders are having a heyday right now.
They are, yeah.
Builders are making up, in some parts of the country, up to 22% of the market. Normally, they only make up about 11. So they're able to kind of fill in that gap. But I believe it's going to be a long time because think about it like this. Even if rates were in the 5s and someone has a 3 and they're going to move up, there's still such a price difference there that they had to have gotten a raise, some sort of additional down payment, something to justify that traditional move up. So I think even at maybe 5, 5.5, we're still kind of have a little bit of lock-in effect.
Right.
So I don't see this rush in inventory happening from that perspective. The next one people like to go into is, well, okay, what about foreclosures?
Oh, yeah. They've doubled, Anton.
Yeah, so
they've doubled from 0.5 to 1. No, but I kind of joke. But you were saying this about the same thing with building being so much higher from a percentage standpoint.
Yes.
Foreclosures have ticked up just the smallest of amounts. But I think people also forget that we were in a moratorium on foreclosures all through COVID.
Yeah. So most of your moratorium is lifted.
Right.
And so you're moving into a traditional market with people foreclosing on properties. But didn't we just have the most price appreciation in history happen over the last 3 years?
Yes.
So let's work through this logically. If I'm behind on my payment, do I actually probably still have equity, yes or yes?
Yes, yes.
So I can sell my home and pocket the money.
Right.
I'm never going into foreclosure because I actually have equity.
Right.
So unless it's a foreclosure from the last maybe 1.5 to 2 years, everyone else is going to have a substantial amount of equity and be able to pay for it. So that dispels part of the myth. There's equity there. 2, the foreclosure rate has risen, but the foreclosure rate, like you were joking, it went from like 0.1 to 0.2, which is a doubling, but we got to put color and perspective to this. When the market was at its worst, and I believe this was in 2010, the national foreclosure rate was 2.23%. So a little over 2% of all homes were being foreclosed on. Right now, on a national level, we're at like 0.2. So you've got to increase that rate by so much. What causes people to go into foreclosure?
Well, usually it's not having any employment.
Okay. So the unemployment rate would have to massively rise from where we're at.
What would happen if the unemployment rate massively rose?
The Fed would lower interest rates.
Rates would come down. Interesting. What would that might do? That might unlock some of those people that are locked into their home that could move up, right? So, yeah, and this is, I think, kind of the point.
Yes.
Is that, and you made it earlier, the challenge that I see with we could take any one of the topics that people bring up about a reason, one data set, and we
Yes.
can build a story around that data set, right?
Yes.
But talk us through what's really necessary if you're going to make an analysis of the housing market. I mean, it's not simple.
Yes. Yeah, so housing for all of us, even for investors at times, is really emotional. Like we feel it, okay? Because it's a basic human need. So what happens is we like to make a judgment against that really quickly. And so we get one data point and we go, that validated my feeling. I'm going to go with that. In reality, if we're going to be, true economists, data scientists about this, you need 3 to 5 things to be able to kind of prove that something's going to actually happen. So what they do is they say the foreclosure rate is rising, therefore there's going to be a tsunami. Well, it's going to take the foreclosure rate rising. It would take unemployment rate rising. It would take personal savings going down. Go look at the M2 money supply on the Fed's website. We still have a lot of cash in the system.
Right.
You would also see personal debts rise quite a bit. Now, credit card spending is going up, so we are seeing that.
And it's more expensive to hold that debt.
And it's more expensive to hold that debt. Okay, so yep. So there's cracks in this foundation. There's problems with what's happening, but none of these is substantial enough yet, and I want to point that out yet, to create the tsunami that people are talking about. Another one that people like to go into is they like to say, well, Airbnb revenues are down.
Right.
So then all of these Airbnbs are going to hit the market all at once. So on a episode that I did, I went and I looked to see how many Airbnbs there were in the U.S. There's approximately 1.4 million Airbnbs. There's approximately 140 million housing units, aka Airbnb makes up about 1% of the total housing units. So even if all of those came to the market today,
right,
which would just never happen, because once again, a lot of them have equity. But if they all hit today, we still wouldn't even be at that foreclosure rate that we were in 2010 that was really causing the market to shift down. So this fallacy of like, well, the Airbnb crash is going to cause it to happen, there's simply not enough there.
Well, I think that there's no question that a lot of amateur investors got on the Airbnb train. And I spoke about this on a previous episode. So there's no question. And they're not going to have the stomach for dealing with perhaps a compression in the rents. They thought this was going to be great. They realized it's like every business, it's a pain in the ass, and they're just going to let it go. But to Anton's point, they have equity. They can sell it. At this point, that's good. We could use the inventory right now. I do think that there is a possibility that there is some certain markets or maybe even communities that have an overwhelming amount of Airbnbs to where it's not the 1%. It's actually a significantly larger percentage of the homes in that particular market. Like I'm thinking like Phoenix right now. Like I don't know the numbers in Phoenix. I'm kind of talking, but it's 119 degrees there right now. No one is renting an Airbnb in Phoenix. I mean, there probably is. Someone's traveling for business or who knows. But my point is they've seen one of the largest increases in Airbnb activity, and this is a season where some people may decide to throw in the towel because there's a lot of competition. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's pockets that could be impacted by the Airbnb, people pulling back from Airbnb. But I don't see it adding to a tsunami of additional listings. And again, any small amount at this point, I think would be helpful. I want to go back to one thing though you mentioned about the builders. One video I was watching talked about, and I don't know if this is true or not, but that builders have already started lowering their prices as much as 10 to 15%.
Yep.
I don't know if this is true or not. This is what the video said. You can't believe everything you watch on YouTube, by the way. But that they've already lowered values by 10 to 15%, and that is just kind of showing what's going to happen in the rest of the housing market. Like, any thoughts on that? I mean, do you know if that's true? And B, what are your thoughts?
So in some of those overbuilt markets in Texas, Utah, parts of Phoenix, you've seen that happen. Here in the Seattle metro, because I know our numbers so much better, that happened in third and fourth quarter of 2022. But that was also happening to the whole market.
Right.
So if you looked at the stats here in the Seattle metro, builders lowered their price faster and hit the bottom faster than the home sellers.
Okay.
What's also interesting is now the builder pricing is now climbing faster than the residential resale. Okay, why? Builders pay more attention.
Right.
They've got 10, 20 homes to sell, not just one. Secondly, a builder has in their toolkit something that the average home seller does not. That builder has the ability to buy the rate down quite often for the home buyer.
Right.
And so they can advertise a below market rate to attract more people in. And especially a lot of these big national builders have their own finance arms attached to them.
Correct.
So I would not be worried about a builder lowering their price. Now, also understand, a builder profit on average is anywhere between 12 to 20%. So if they drop 10%, they're still making money.
Right.
Okay. At 15, they could maybe still be making money, but they're going to hit the bottom and then they're going to work right out of it. What we're seeing here in the Seattle metro, which is crazy, there was the pause in third and fourth quarter, and all the builders and developers said, I'm out, we're done, nothing's happening. About 60 days ago, 90 days ago, somewhere in that window, we started getting the phone calls again. Hey, Anton, you got any lots? Like, whoa. Hey, we're buying. Hey, we're buying. Hey, we're buying.
So like May, June time?
Exactly. In the Seattle metro, it's game on like Donkey Kong. Like, one of my friends is a very large developer in the area who has over 30 plats. He sold like 12 of them and then just stopped. And I asked him, I said, well, why'd you stop? He goes, because the prices of my lots are going to go up. There's no point in selling them. There's no more coming. So another interesting thing that happened is, remember, we're already behind on new construction inventory.
Right.
But most of the U.S., and the Seattle metro included, stopped again last year.
Right. Well, I think that just goes to show you that the same thing that caused builders not to build for those 4 years and then slowly ramp up. Look how quick they were to pull back as soon as there was any shift in the market,
Yes.
And that's going to continue to, we need every house that they can build at this point. And we can talk about all the other reasons why it's hard to find lots. You have a passion around that, I know. But, we can't have them pulling back on inventory or creating new inventory. And it happened so quickly.
So quick,
yeah.
So quick. And so let's keep down this line for a half a second. If they stopped for 6 months, that means there is a 6-month gap at basically a year and a half out of all of that production coming. And so what people don't realize is this is a massive ripple effect. It's not just that hole. They'll start moving inventory forward to try to fill the gap, and that hole just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So a year from now, 2 years from now, so right as interest rates start to fall,
right?
Okay, let's just say it happens in 2 years, is going to be a natural gap in the pipeline of inventory. So it's going to be a double whammy again.
Yeah. Well, that sounds exciting.
It is exciting for investors, for people who own rental properties, for people who want to go build a house, want to flip a house, want to put up a manufactured home. This is the best opportunity you've had to do that. I know this sounds crazy. In the last 3 years, this starting now is probably your best opportunity to do that, to have stuff ready for spring of 24 or late 24. Or if you're going to be really patient, come out with it in early 25 or mid 25.
Because the average person's going to wait.
Because the average person's going to wait.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to see that sometimes, for people, because it's like the best time to buy is when there's blood in the streets, right? I mean, it's hard to do that. That's why every time that's been done in history, it's like a famous event that happened, But I think that you're right. We know that time is coming. Let's talk about another thing that they point to that is going to maybe see buyers choose not to want to purchase, even if there was inventory, and that is rents going down. What are you seeing in the area of rents?
So rents went down for a little bit on a national level, and there still is some rent compression in some markets. And we had rent compression, once again, same thing, third and fourth quarter of last year. And now you're seeing rents start to go back up. And you have to think of this also as another function of supply and demand. So we are still behind on rental housing throughout most of the U.S. because it wasn't built a ton. There is still a bunch of multifamily coming, the big, 100-unit complexes. Second, and you run giant mortgage companies, so you understand this better than most. What happens to the buyer who can't qualify to buy?
Yeah, they rent.
They rent. So if we have less buyers that qualify,
with more demand for renting as affordability goes.
Yeah. So we're creating artificial demand for renting right now because less people can buy than normal. And so we all saw that, and the news reported it, but I believe that most places have flattened and started increasing. I can tell you our numbers here in the Seattle Metro is we have started increasing again because I'm re-renting some of our own personal properties that we inked last year, and we're seeing $200-$300 jumps.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I have a vacancy starting September 1st. So
you're golden.
That's funny. All right, so rents. Okay, so we talked about rents. We talked about inventory. We talked about foreclosures. What else? What else are the general reasons you hear? I mean, I guess the other one is just plain affordability, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, rates are high.
Yep.
And I don't want to say this out loud, but they could get worse before they get better. Well, Anton, I appreciate you coming on today, and this really it was like one of our conversations we have about the market, and we just kind of get to banter back and forth. I hope that you guys enjoyed this because I have to believe that if there are things that are interesting and top of mind for us who are in this business every day at a high level and leading teams and managing teams of people doing this, I have to imagine that it's of interest to all of you. And so if you have thoughts, comments on the things that we said, please leave them in the comments down below. I'll obviously like and subscribe to our channel because not only does it help us rank on YouTube and the other platforms, we're on all the platforms now.
Awesome.
So they might be watching us, listening to us on one of the podcast platforms. So we're going worldwide here at Market Shares, and we appreciate your support. I appreciate you, Anton, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.